The rusted hinges screamed in protest as Lieutenant Commander Jake Sullivan pried open the basement trapdoor, his headlamp cutting through the darkness below like a knife through black velvet. What he expected to find was maybe some old root, cellar or storm shelter, what every farm in rural Montana seemed to have buried beneath decades of dust and forgotten memories. What he didn't expect was the gleaming steel ladder that descended into professionally machined darkness, each rung bearing the unmistakable precision of military engineering. "What the hell, Uncle Charlie?" Jake whispered into the void, his voice echoing off surfaces that shouldn't exist 30 feet below a wheat farm. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. The call from the lawyer had come 3 weeks ago, interrupting his post-mission debrief in Virginia Beach. Charles Sullivan, his father's estranged brother whom Jake had met exactly twice in his 34 years, had died of a heart attack and inexplicably left his 400-acre Montana spread to his Navy SEAL nephew. No explanation, no final letter, just a deed transfer and a set of keys delivered by certified mail. Now, standing in the farmhouse basement with a crowbar in his hands and 20 years of special operations training screaming warnings in his head, Jake realized Uncle Charlie had been keeping secrets that made his own classified missions look like Sunday school lessons. The steel ladder disappeared into darkness that seemed to swallow his headlamp beam. Professional-grade ventilation hummed. Somewhere below, the kind you'd find in a government facility, not a grain farm. Jake tested the first rung with his full weight. Solid, military spec. The metal was cold against his palms as he began his descent, each step taking him further from everything he thought he knew about his uncle, and deeper into what felt like the biggest intelligence breach of the century. 20 rungs down, his boots touched concrete. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and machine oil, familiar scents from aircraft carriers and nuclear submarines. His light swept across a corridor that stretched beyond his beam's reach, walls lined with the same gray paint used in every naval facility he'd ever seen. Emergency lighting strips ran along the ceiling, dark now but wired with the kind of redundant systems that suggested this place had once been very much alive. Jake pulled out his satellite phone, not surprised when it showed no signal. Whoever had built this had planned for communication blackouts. He activated the backup GPS tracker in his watch, a habit from years of missions where extraction depended on precise coordinates, and continued forward. The corridor opened into a control room that made Jake's blood run cold. Banks of dark monitors lined the walls, ergonomic chairs positioned at stations designed for 24-hour operations. But it was the logo etched into the metal plaque above the main console that stopped his heart. A submarine silhouette surrounded by stars with text that read, "Deep Blue Station, Authorized Personnel Only." His hands shook as he traced the lettering. Deep Blue had been a whispered legend in special operations circles, a ghost program that allegedly never existed. Jake had heard fragments of stories during classified briefings, dismissing them as paranoid fiction. Submarines couldn't operate in Montana. There was no water deep enough, no strategic value. A red emergency light suddenly bathed the room as his movement triggered some ancient sensor. Jake's SEAL training kicked in immediately. He dropped into a combat crouch, scanning for threats while his mind cataloged exits and defensive positions. But instead of alarms or security responses, a single monitor flickered to life, displaying a message in block letters. "Welcome, Lieutenant Commander Sullivan. Uncle Charlie said you'd find this eventually. Please proceed to Briefing Room Alpha. The submarine is waiting." If you're enjoying this story so far, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps support the channel. Now let's continue with this incredible tale. Jake stared at the monitor for a full 30 seconds, his tactical mind warring with disbelief. Uncle Charlie had been a wheat farmer. A quiet, Reclusive man who'd sent Christmas cards with pictures of grain elevators and occasionally called to complain about commodity prices. The idea that he'd been connected to a classified submarine program was beyond absurd. It was impossible. But the evidence surrounded him like a steel embrace. The monitor pulsed softly, waiting for his response. Jake noticed a handprint scanner beside the keyboard, its red light blinking expectantly. His first instinct was to retreat, call his commanding officer, and let someone with a higher security clearance sort this out. But 18 years in the Navy had taught him that some discoveries couldn't be undone. He was already in too deep. To pretend this didn't exist, he pressed his palm to the scanner, not entirely surprised when it chimed acceptance. The monitor cleared, then filled with a video feed that made his knees buckle. Uncle Charlie sat in what looked like the same control room, but alive, vital, wearing a Navy dress uniform with ribbons Jake didn't recognize. The timestamp showed. The recording was made 3 months ago. "Hello, Jake. If you're watching this, then I'm dead and you've inherited more than a farm." Charlie's voice carried the authority of command, nothing like the quiet farmer Jake remembered. "I've been watching your career, son. 20 years special operations, 7 combat deployments, security clearance so high you probably can't tell your own wife what you do. You're the right man for this burden." The camera pulled back, revealing the full control room. Banks of monitors showed sonar readings, depth charges, perimeter security systems. But it was the main display that sent ice through Jake's veins. A detailed schematic of a submarine, massive beyond anything in the current fleet, positioned in what the readout labeled as Sublevel 7 Slip Alpha. Deep Blue Station was established. In 1962, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, Charlie continued. Turns out, the best defense was a good offense. Jake's mind reeled. The Great Lakes were over 600 miles away. There was no way to get a submarine to Montana, no underground waterway that could. The video continued as if reading his thoughts. The station connects to Lake Superior through a natural cave system that we enhanced. 17 miles of underground river, reinforced and deepened by Army Corps engineers who thought they were building a flood control system. The submarine you're about to meet has been stationed here for 57 years, maintained by a skeleton crew that the official record says never existed. A new schematic appeared cross-sections showing the underground complex extending 7 levels deep, with massive chambers capable of housing not just one submarine, but an entire fleet. Jake recognized the engineering principles: blast-resistant construction, redundant life support, electromagnetic shielding. This wasn't just a hiding place. It was a fully operational military installation buried beneath America's heartland. Our mission was to provide backup naval capability if coastal bases were destroyed, Charlie said. But administrations changed, and eventually people forgot we existed. The video switched to show Charlie in civilian clothes, standing in front of the farmhouse Jake had inherited. "I've been the caretaker for 37 years. Jake made sure the system stayed operational, the submarine maintained, the secret buried. But I'm getting old, and this responsibility needs to pass to someone who understands duty." Jake sank into one of the ergonomic chairs, overwhelmed by the implications. A functional submarine base beneath his inherited farm. A ghost fleet that officially didn't exist. And now he was apparently its commanding officer. "The submarine is called the USS Phantom," Charlie continued. "Nuclear-powered, built in 1961 using technology that was 20 years ahead of its time. She's been waiting down there, fully operational, for someone who might need her. The question is, Jake, what are you going to do with her?" The video ended, leaving Jake alone with the humming ventilation and the weight of a secret that could reshape everything he thought he knew about American military history. The monitor displayed a simple menu: proceed to briefing room Alpha, review station logs, emergency protocols, and ominously, submarine access. Jake chose the briefing room, following new corridor markers that led deeper into the complex. The walls showed signs of regular maintenance, fresh paint, updated electrical systems, modern computer terminals integrated with 1960s-era construction. Someone had spent serious money keeping this place operational for decades. Briefing room. Alpha looked like something from a Pentagon situation room. Digital displays covered every wall, showing real-time intelligence feeds from around the world. Jake recognized some of the sources: satellite imagery, naval tracking systems, communications, intercepts. But others displayed data he'd never seen before, monitoring systems that seemed to track submarine movements with impossible precision. A new video activated as he entered. This one showing Charlie in what was clearly recent months, his face gaunt from the illness that would eventually kill him. "I need to tell you about the Phantom, Jake, because you're going to have to make some hard decisions very soon." Charlie's voice carried new urgency. 3 months ago, our monitoring systems detected something that should be impossible. A foreign submarine in Lake Superior, using the same entry route we've kept secret for 60 years. The main display switched to sonar readings, showing the unmistakable signature of a nuclear submarine moving through deep water. But the timestamp showed these readings were from Lake Superior, a body of water that wasn't supposed to be deep enough or accessible enough for submarine operations. "Chinese," Charlie said simply. "Their new Type 095 attack submarine, somehow navigating the Great Lakes. They've discovered our secret route, Jake, and they're using it for purposes we can only guess at. The Phantom has been tracking them for months, maintaining distance, gathering intelligence." Jake's special operations training kicked in, analyzing the tactical situation. If a Chinese submarine was operating in American inland waters, using a secret route that led to a classified base, the national security implications were staggering. But who could he report this to without revealing Deep Blue Station's existence? "Here's the thing, son," Charlie continued. "I've been getting reports from our network other caretakers at other stations. Deep Blue wasn't the only ghost base from the Cold War. There are 7 others scattered across the country, all officially non-existent, all maintaining assets that could be critical if someone decided to play hardball with American sovereignty." The display showed a map of the United States dotted with red markers, underground facilities in Nevada, Texas, North Dakota, and other locations Jake couldn't immediately identify. Each marker pulsed with status indicators showing active operations, maintained equipment, and in 3 cases, warning signals that suggested something was very wrong. "The Chinese aren't just sightseeing, Jake. They're probing our defenses, testing response times, mapping our capabilities. And because these bases don't officially exist, there's no one in the current command structure who knows how to coordinate a response." Charlie leaned closer to the camera, his eyes holding the intensity Jake remembered from their brief childhood meetings. "I'm dying, son, and this burden is falling to you at exactly the wrong time. But maybe that's not a coincidence. Maybe someone upstairs figured we'd need a Navy SEAL to handle what's coming." The video ended with coordinates and access codes, but Jake barely noticed. His mind was racing through the implications of what he'd learned: a secret submarine base, Chinese infiltration of American waters, a network of ghost military installations with no official oversight. And somehow, he was now responsible for all of it. Jake spent the next 4 hours reviewing station logs, amazed by the scope of operations that had continued in absolute secrecy for over half a century. The logs showed regular maintenance schedules, crew rotations disguised as agricultural workers, and supply deliveries hidden within normal farming operations. Uncle Charlie hadn't just been a caretaker, he'd been running a full military installation, while maintaining his cover as a simple wheat farmer. The most recent entries were alarming. Multiple sonar contacts in the Great Lakes, movement patterns suggesting systematic reconnaissance, and most troubling, evidence that the Chinese submarine had deployed some kind of monitoring equipment along the secret waterway. Jake pulled up the submarine access menu, his finger hovering over the command that would take him to see the USS Phantom in person. Everything in his training told him to stop, to call his superiors, to let someone else handle this massive breach of protocol. But the log showed increasing Chinese activity, and the next scheduled patrol was already overdue. He pressed the command. New corridor lights activated, leading deeper into the earth than Jake had thought possible. The descent felt endless, past levels marked with designations like power generation, munitions storage, and crew quarters. The scale of the operation was breathtaking. This wasn't just a hidden submarine dock, it was a fully functional naval base built into the Montana bedrock. Finally, the corridor opened into a chamber that defied belief. The USS Phantom floated in a subterranean lake that stretched beyond the reach of the overhead lighting. She was beautiful in the way that only military hardware could be: sleek, deadly, perfectly engineered for a purpose that transcended aesthetics. At nearly 400 feet long, she dwarfed every submarine Jake had seen, her black hull gleaming like obsidian. But it wasn't just her size that took his breath away. It was the fact that she was clearly operational. Steam rose from her conning tower, indicating active nuclear power. Crew members in Navy dungarees moved purposefully along her deck, performing maintenance with the casual efficiency of sailors who'd been doing this job for decades. A man in his 50s approached from the gangway, wearing khakis and dolphins that identified him as a submarine officer. His bearing screamed command authority, though Jake didn't recognize his face from any official Navy roster. "Lieutenant Commander Sullivan," the man said, offering a crisp salute. "Commander Michael Torres, USS Phantom. Charlie told us you'd be coming eventually, though I'll admit, we hoped it would be under better circumstances." Jake returned the salute automatically, his mind still processing the impossibility of what he was seeing. "Commander Torres, I need to understand what's happening here. This base, this submarine, how is any of this possible?" Torres gestured toward the Phantom, pride evident in his voice. "She's the most advanced submarine ever built, sir. Nuclear. Powered with classified systems. We've been her caretakers since 1985, maintaining operational readiness for a mission we hoped would never come. But now it has," Jake said, understanding beginning to dawn. "Yes, sir. The Chinese submarine has made 3 more incursions in the past week. They're definitely mapping our route, probably preparing for some kind of operation. We've been tracking them, gathering intelligence, waiting for orders from someone with the authority to act." Jake looked out at the impossible underground lake, processing the weight of command that had fallen onto his shoulders. How many people know about this place? Currently operational? Maybe 30 personnel across all 7 stations, but Jake. Torres hesitated, using his first name for the first time. Charlie left specific instructions. If something happened to him before this crisis was resolved, command of the entire network would transfer to you. Not just Deep Blue Station, all of it. The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. He wasn't just inheriting a farm and a submarine. He was now commanding a shadow fleet that officially didn't exist, facing an enemy that shouldn't be able to reach American inland waters with resources that no one in the current government knew existed. His satellite phone vibrated with an encrypted message from his commanding officer. "Report to Norfolk immediately. Chinese activity in the Great Lakes requires special operations assessment." Jake stared at the message, then at the USS Phantom floating in her impossible harbor. His official Navy career was calling him back to the surface world, to report what he'd found through proper channels. But the evidence suggested that proper channels had forgotten these assets existed, and by the time bureaucracy caught up with reality, it might be too late to respond to whatever the Chinese were planning. He looked at Commander Torres, seeing the same tactical assessment in the man's eyes. They were off the books, outside the official command structure, but they were also the only force positioned to respond to a threat that no one else even knew existed. "Commander," Jake said finally, "I need a full briefing on the Phantom's capabilities and the Chinese submarine's recent activities. Then I need to see the other station commanders via secure communication. If I'm inheriting this responsibility, I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with." Torres smiled grimly. "Aye, sir. Welcome to the Deep Blue Network. Charlie. Always said you'd know what to do when the time came." As they walked toward the Phantom's gangway, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just changed in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. Above them, his inherited farm sat peaceful in the Montana sun, hiding a secret that could alter the balance of power in a new kind of Cold War. The question was whether he was ready to command forces that officially didn't exist against an enemy that shouldn't be able to reach them. But as he stepped aboard the USS Phantom, feeling the subtle vibration of her nuclear reactor through the deck plates, Jake realized he was about to find out. The next few hours transformed Jake's understanding of American military capability and the scope of threats facing the country. Commander Torres led him through the Phantom's interior, revealing technology that seemed decades ahead of anything Jake had encountered in his official Navy career. She was built using experimental systems decades ahead of the regular fleet, Torres explained as they toured the control room. The control room was a marvel of engineering. Every station was manned by personnel in uniforms that bore no unit designations or name tags. "Where did you find these people?" Jake asked quietly. "Volunteers from the regular fleet who were read into the program," Torres replied. "Submariners who showed exceptional aptitude and absolute reliability. Once they join Deep Blue, they officially retire from active duty but continue drawing full pay and benefits through shell companies. It's the only way to maintain operational security." Jake reviewed tactical displays showing the Chinese submarine's movement patterns, immediately recognizing the systematic approach of professional reconnaissance. "They're not just exploring," he concluded. "They're mapping defensive positions, testing response times, and identifying vulnerabilities. This is preparation for something bigger." "That's our assessment too," Torres agreed. "The question is what they're planning and when they'll execute it." A communications officer approached with an encrypted tablet. "Sir, incoming priority transmission from Deep Blue 7. Commander Harrison requests an immediate conference with the new operational commander." Jake took the tablet, seeing a video feed from what looked like another underground facility. A woman in her 40s wearing Navy khakis appeared on screen, her expression grim. "Commander Patricia Harrison, Deep Blue 7, she introduced herself. "Commander Harrison, Deep Blue 7, she introduced herself. "I'm assuming you're Lieutenant." "Commander Sullivan. Charlie briefed us that you'd be taking over network command if something happened to him." "I'm still trying to understand what I've inherited," Jake replied honestly. "What's the situation at your station?" "We've got problems. Our facility monitors the Pacific approaches through underwater sensor networks that officially don't exist. 3 days ago, we detected multiple submarine signatures approaching the West Coast Chinese, Russian, and at least one we can't identify. They're not following normal patrol patterns. This looks coordinated." Jake felt cold certainty settle in his stomach. "Show me the data." Harrison's screen switched to tactical displays showing submarine movements along both American coasts. The patterns were unmistakable classic positioning for coordinated operations, with units moving to cut off naval response routes while maintaining standoff distances from official tracking systems. "There's more," Harrison continued. "Deep Blue 4 in Texas has been monitoring unusual activity in the Gulf of Mexico. Chinese research vessels conducting surveys that match pre-invasion reconnaissance protocols. And Deep Blue 2 in Nevada has detected significant increases in satellite surveillance of our Western military installations. Torres leaned over Jake's shoulder. Sir, with respect, this looks like preparation for something major. Not just probing, actual positioning for offensive operations. Jake analyzed the intelligence with growing alarm. The Chinese weren't just testing American responses. They were positioning for coordinated action while maintaining plausible deniability. If they could operate in American inland waters without detection, they could potentially strike targets that were considered completely secure. Commander Harrison, what's the current status of all Deep Blue stations? 6 of 7 are fully operational with complete crews and ready submarines. Deep Blue 5 went dark 2 weeks ago. We assumed their caretaker had the same health issues Charlie was dealing with, but we haven't been able to establish contact. Jake made his first command decision. I need a secure video conference with all operational station commanders in 2 hours. We're going to coordinate response protocols and establish new communication schedules. If we're looking at coordinated foreign operations in American waters, we need to act as a unified force. Sir, Torres interjected carefully, acting without official authorization could be considered. Could it be considered? Jake cut him off. We're already outside official authorization. These stations don't exist. These submarines aren't on any Navy roster, and the threats we're tracking aren't being reported through normal intelligence channels. We can either wait for someone in Washington to figure out we exist, or we can do our jobs. Jake spent the next hour reviewing Deep Blue protocols, amazed by the foresight of the original planners. The network had been designed to operate independently during national emergencies, with each station capable of autonomous action while maintaining coordination with the others. Command authority was clearly defined, with operational control passing to the senior officer in the network during crisis situations. By any measure, Jake was now that senior officer. The video conference that evening connected him with 6 submarine commanders operating from bases scattered across the country. Each reported similar patterns of foreign surveillance and positioning, building a picture of coordinated intelligence gathering that suggested something far beyond routine espionage. The timeline is accelerating, reported Commander Parks from Deep Blue 3. We're seeing increased activity across all monitored areas, with foreign assets moving into positions that suggest action within days, not weeks. Jake studied the combined intelligence, his mind automatically shifting into the tactical planning mode that had served him through 7 combat deployments. Here's what we're going to do. Each station will maintain heightened alert status and continuous monitoring. We'll establish 8-hour communication schedules to share intelligence in real time. If any station detects hostile action, all stations will immediately shift to combat readiness. Sir, Commander Harrison's voice carried careful concern. Are we talking about engaging foreign military assets without authorization from the chain of command? Jake looked around the Phantom's control room, seeing the faces of sailors who had spent decades maintaining readiness for a mission they hoped would never come. I'm talking about defending American territory from foreign military operations that the official chain of command doesn't know exist. These bases were built for exactly the scenario threats that bypass normal defense systems. The conference ended with each commander understanding their new operational status. Jake found himself alone with Torres, contemplating the enormity of what he'd just committed to. Charlie always said this day would come, Torres said quietly. Not the Chinese specifically, but the day when the Deep Blue network would have to act independently to defend the country. He prepared for this his whole adult life. Jake nodded, understanding his uncle's burden for the first time. Commander, I need an honest assessment. If we have to engage foreign submarines in American waters, are we prepared for the consequences? Torres was quiet for a long moment. Sir, The Phantom and her sister ships were built to fight and win in scenarios that conventional forces couldn't handle. We have weapon systems that could neutralize threats without leaving evidence, and operational capabilities that would let us strike anywhere in the world without being traced back to American assets. And politically, if anyone asks, we never existed. The Deep Blue Network was designed with complete deniability, no official records, no budget lines, no personnel files that would connect us to the regular Navy. We can protect the country from threats that diplomacy can't address. Jake understood. He wasn't just commanding a hidden submarine force. He was inheriting America's deepest black operation, designed to handle threats that official channels couldn't manage. His secure phone buzzed with a message from Norfolk. Intelligence indicates possible foreign submarine activity in Great Lakes. Deploy to assess and report. Maintain communication blackout until mission complete. Jake stared at the message, realizing that official channels were finally starting to detect the same threats Deep Blue had been tracking for weeks. But by the time bureaucracy authorized appropriate response, it might be too late to prevent. Whatever the Chinese were planning, he made his decision. Commander Torres, prepare the Phantom for immediate deployment. We're going hunting. The USS Phantom slipped through the underground waterway like a steel ghost, moving in complete silence. Jake stood in the control room, watching depth and navigation displays that showed their progress through passages that officially didn't exist. Approaching Junction Alpha 7, the navigation officer reported. 20 minutes to Lake Superior. Access. Jake had spent 18 hours learning the Phantom's advanced systems. Sir, Torres said quietly, once we enter the Great Lakes, we'll be in uncharted territory from an operational standpoint. No one has ever used the Deep Blue assets for active missions in domestic waters. Jake nodded, understanding the weight of precedent he was about to establish. Commander, we have foreign military assets operating in American inland waters, gathering intelligence that could threaten national security. If that doesn't qualify as a mission requiring Deep Blue response, I don't know what would. The control room maintained the quiet efficiency Jake recognized from combat operations, but he sensed the crew's awareness that they were making history. The Deep Blue Network had maintained readiness for decades. The Deep Blue Network had maintained readiness while hoping they'd never be needed. Today, that wait was ending. Lieutenant Sarah Chun, the sonar operator, looked up from her console with practiced calm. Contact bearing 270, range approximately 12 nautical miles. The signature matches the Chinese Type 095 nuclear attack submarine. Jake felt the familiar pre-combat focus settling over him. Classification? Single contact, maintaining depth at approximately 200 feet, speed 4 knots. Appears to be conducting systematic sonar mapping of the lake bottom. Torres moved to the tactical display, studying the contact's position and movement pattern. They're definitely surveying, sir. That's not a patrol pattern, it's intelligence. Gathering. Jake reviewed the tactical situation, his special operations training automatically assessing options and consequences. The Chinese submarine was operating in waters they had no legal right to access, gathering intelligence that could only be intended for future hostile operations. Under normal circumstances, this would trigger immediate diplomatic protests and military posturing. But normal circumstances didn't account for secret waterways that connected the Great Lakes to hidden submarine bases. Weapon status? Jake asked. All systems operational, sir. We're carrying a full load of Mark 48 torpedoes, plus the experimental systems that aren't in any official inventory. Jake studied the sonar display, watching the Chinese submarine's methodical survey pattern. Every minute they gathered intelligence brought them closer to mapping American defensive capabilities that were supposed to be completely secure. Take us to periscope depth, he ordered. Silent running, maintain minimum distance for visual confirmation. The Phantom rose through Lake Superior's dark waters in complete silence. At periscope depth, Jake raised the optical sensors, scanning the surface for any indication of coordinated operations. What he saw confirmed his worst fears. Multiple surface contacts, he reported, studying the display feeds. Chinese research vessel at bearing 090, Russian intelligence ship at bearing 180, and what appears to be a North Korean vessel maintaining station at the lake's northern approach. Torres joined him at the periscope display, his expression grim. "Sir, this isn't just intelligence gathering. This is coordinated positioning for some kind of operation. They've got the lake effectively surrounded." Jake's mind raced through the implications. Foreign military assets operating openly in American waters while a submarine conducted covert reconnaissance of strategic installations. The coordination suggested planning at the highest levels of multiple governments, targeting vulnerabilities that American defensive planners didn't know existed. "Lieutenant Chen, any indication they've detected us?" "Negative, sir. The Phantom's acoustic signature is effectively 0 at this speed and depth. They have no idea we're here." Jake made his decision with the certainty that had served him through years of special operations. "We're going to shadow the submarine and gather intelligence on their operations. I need to understand what they're surveying and how they're coordinating with surface assets." The next 4 hours revealed the scope of foreign intelligence operations in American waters. The Chinese submarine conducted systematic surveys of underwater installations that were supposed to be completely secret, while surface vessels maintained communication networks that bypassed all American monitoring systems. "Sir," Chun reported, "the submarine is approaching coordinates that match the entrance to Deep Blue Station Alpha." Jake felt ice in his veins. Deep Blue Station Alpha was the network's primary communication hub, built into Lake Superior's underwater geography to coordinate operations between all 7 stations. If the Chinese had discovered its location, they could potentially compromise the entire network. Distance to contact? 6 nautical miles in closing. They're definitely heading for the station entrance. Jake faced a decision that would define his command of the Deep Blue network. He could maintain surveillance, gathering intelligence while risking exposure of America's most classified military assets. Or he could act to protect those assets, potentially triggering an international incident that could escalate beyond control. His secure communication system chimed with an incoming message from Deep Blue 7. "Foreign submarine activity detected approaching Station Alpha. Request immediate guidance from Network Command." Similar messages arrived from 3 other stations, all reporting increased foreign surveillance of their areas. The coordinated nature of the intelligence gathering was undeniable. This wasn't opportunistic espionage. It was preparation for something much larger. Jake opened the Network Command channel, connecting with all operational Deep Blue stations. "This is Network Actual. Foreign assets are conducting coordinated reconnaissance of multiple stations. We're going to active defensive posture effective immediately." Commander Harrison's voice came through the secure channel. "Sir, are we authorized to engage foreign military assets?" "We're authorized to defend American territory from hostile reconnaissance," Jake replied. "If they're mapping our installations for future attack, we have both the right and responsibility to stop them." Torres moved closer, speaking quietly. "Jake, once we act, there's no going back. The Deep Blue network will be exposed, at least partially. The political consequences could be enormous." Jake studied the tactical display, watching the Chinese submarine approach America's most classified installation while surface vessels provided coordination that could only be intended for hostile purposes. His special operations training had prepared him for situations where official channels couldn't provide timely authorization, where tactical commanders had to make strategic decisions based on immediate threats. "Commander Torres, prepare to engage. We're going to stop this reconnaissance mission and send a message that American waters are defended, even where they don't expect it. Engagement rules, sir. Jake considered the options, weighing tactical effectiveness against political consequences. Disable, don't destroy. I want them to know they've been caught, but I don't want to escalate to lethal force, unless they give us no choice. The USS Phantom moved into attack position with the silent precision that made her the most advanced submarine ever built. Her crew worked with the calm efficiency of professionals who had trained for this moment their entire careers, even though they'd hoped it would never come. Firing solution ready, the weapons officer reported. EMP torpedo loaded and armed. Single shot will disable their electronics without permanent damage. Jake took one last look at the tactical situation. The Chinese submarine was now less than 2 miles from Deep Blue Station Alpha, conducting active sonar mapping that would reveal installation details in minutes. Surface vessels were maintaining coordinated positions that could only be intended to support follow-up operations. Fire, he ordered. The EMP torpedo launched silently, designed to disable electronics without structural damage. Jake watched its progress on the tactical display, counting seconds until impact. The Chinese submarines. Sonar signature suddenly changed, indicating emergency surface procedures as their electronics failed. On the surface, Jake could see through the periscope that the coordinating vessels were responding with obvious alarm, their carefully planned operation suddenly disrupted by an attack they couldn't understand. Target is surfacing, Chun reported. Electronics appear to be completely disabled. They're running on emergency power only. Jake opened the communication channel to all Deep Blue stations. Network actual to all stations. Foreign reconnaissance missions has been disrupted. Maintain defensive posture and report any changes in threat status. Torres looked at him with a mixture of admiration and concern. Sir, we just engaged a foreign military asset in American waters using weapon systems that officially don't exist. The Chinese are going to want answers we can't give them. Jake nodded, understanding that he'd just crossed a line that would change everything about the Deep Blue Network's relationship with the outside world. Commander, prepare a full tactical report for transmission to Norfolk. It's time for official channels to learn that some of America's defensive capabilities are more extensive than they realized. But as he watched the disabled Chinese submarine struggle to restore power while foreign surface vessels circled in obvious confusion, Jake realized that stopping one reconnaissance mission might have just triggered something much larger. Chinese wouldn't simply accept the mysterious failure of their operation. They'd investigate, probe, and ultimately discover that America had defensive capabilities they'd never suspected. The network's long secrecy was about to end, and Jake wasn't sure the country was prepared. His secure phone buzzed with an encrypted message from his official commanding officer. Intelligence reports major electronic failure of foreign submarine in Lake Superior. Cause unknown. Report to Norfolk immediately for a full briefing. Jake stared at the message, realizing that official channels were already detecting the consequences of his actions. Soon, he'd have to explain how a Navy SEAL on leave had ended up commanding America's most classified submarine force against foreign military assets that weren't supposed to be able to reach American inland waters. But first, he had to prepare for whatever response the Chinese were planning. Because stopping their reconnaissance mission was just the beginning of what promised to be a very complicated situation. We're deep into this incredible story now. If you're enjoying this journey, please take a moment to like and share this video. Your support helps us continue creating these detailed stories. Now let's see how this unfolds. The emergency conference call with Norfolk came 18 hours after the engagement, connecting Jake with Admiral Rebecca Martinez, Director of Naval Intelligence, and 2 men whose titles weren't provided, but whose bearings screamed CIA. Lieutenant Commander Sullivan. Admiral Martinez began without preamble. We need to understand exactly what happened in Lake Superior yesterday. Our satellites detected an electromagnetic pulse consistent with military-grade weapons deployment, followed by the emergency surfacing of a Chinese nuclear submarine that had no business being in American inland waters. Jake sat in deep blue, station's secure communication room, choosing his words carefully. "Admiral, I was conducting reconnaissance of reported foreign submarine activity when I encountered a Chinese Type 095, conducting what appeared to be systematic intelligence gathering in waters that should be completely secure." One of the CIA officers leaned forward. "Commander, our records show you're officially on leave, inheriting family property in Montana. How exactly did you end up in position to engage a foreign submarine in Lake Superior?" The moment of truth had arrived. Jake could attempt to maintain operational security about Deep Blue Station, or he could reveal assets that had been classified beyond any official recognition for 60 years. His decision would shape not just his own future, but the entire network's relationship with the government they'd served in absolute secrecy. "Sir, I discovered that my inheritance included more than agricultural land. My uncle was the caretaker for a classified installation that has been monitoring threats to American inland waters since 1962. The silence on the secure channel stretched for nearly 30 seconds. Admiral Martinez was the first to speak, voice carefully controlled. "Commander, there are no classified installations in Montana. That would give you access to submarine warfare capabilities in the Great Lakes. With respect, Admiral, there are 7 such installations across the country, each maintaining operational submarines and crews that have been protecting American interests while remaining completely off the official books," Jake transmitted. The authentication codes Uncle Charlie had provided, watching the faces on his screen as they accessed files that confirmed the existence of assets they'd never imagined. Admiral Martinez's expression shifted from skepticism to amazement, to something approaching alarm as the scope of the Deep Blue network became clear. "My God," she whispered, "these installations ... the submarines ... This has been operational since the Kennedy administration?" "Yes, ma'am. And based on recent intelligence, we're facing exactly the kind of threat they were designed to counter. Foreign military assets are conducting coordinated reconnaissance of American inland waters, mapping defensive capabilities and testing response times." The CIA officer who'd remained silent finally spoke. "Commander, what's the current operational status of these installations?" 6 of 7 stations are fully operational with complete crews and submarines. We've been tracking increased foreign activity for weeks, culminating in yesterday's engagement with the Chinese submarine that was surveying the approach to one of our most sensitive facilities. Admiral Martinez reviewed data that Jake could see streaming across her displays. The submarines. These specifications suggest capabilities beyond anything in our current fleet. They were built using experimental technology that was too advanced for the regular Navy in the 1960s. Magnetic propulsion, advanced sonar arrays, weapon systems that aren't in any official inventory. The second CIA officer leaned back, processing implications that clearly went beyond naval operations. "Commander, if foreign intelligence services discover the existence of these installations, the strategic balance could shift dramatically. These capabilities could be seen as violation of numerous treaties." Jake felt the weight of political complications he'd never considered. "Sir, the installations were designed to operate with complete deniability. If necessary, they can respond to threats without any official acknowledgement of their existence." Admiral Martinez studied something off-screen, then looked back at Jake with obvious concern. "Lieutenant Commander, we need immediate face-to-face briefing on these assets and the current threat situation. But I'm concerned about bringing you to Norfolk. If foreign intelligence is monitoring our communications, your travel could expose these installations. Admiral, I recommend you come to Deep Blue Station. You need to see the capabilities firsthand." And we need to coordinate responses to threats that are escalating faster than official channels can process. The secure channel went silent as the Admiral consulted with personnel Jake couldn't see. When she returned, her expression carried the weight of decisions that could reshape American military strategy. Commander Sullivan, I'm authorizing immediate travel to your location with a classified assessment team. We need a full briefing on Deep Blue capabilities and current threat analysis. But understand what you've revealed changes everything about how we approach maritime defense. The call ended, leaving Jake alone with the knowledge that Deep Blue Station's 60 years of secrecy were officially over. Within hours, the installation would be swarming with Pentagon officials, CIA analysts, and politicians trying to understand how America had maintained a shadow fleet without their knowledge. Commander Torres entered the communication room as Jake finished encrypting his report. Sir, we've got new intelligence from our monitoring networks. The Chinese submarine we disabled yesterday has been joined by 2 more contacts, plus increased surface vessel activity. Jake reviewed the updated tactical displays, seeing patterns. That confirmed his worst fears. They're not backing down. They're escalating. It gets worse, sir. Deep Blue 7 reports 3 foreign submarines operating in coordinated patterns off the west coast, and Deep Blue 4 has detected unusual seismic activity in the Gulf of Mexico that could indicate underwater construction. The scope of foreign operations was becoming clear. This wasn't just intelligence gathering, it was preparation for establishing a permanent hostile presence in American waters, using the same tactics that had allowed Deep Blue Station to remain hidden for decades. Jake's secure phone rang with a call from Commander Harrison at Deep Blue 7. Network actual, we've got a situation. One of the foreign submarines off our coast just deployed what appears to be a permanent monitoring station on the ocean floor. They're not just surveying anymore, they're setting up shop. Jake felt the tactical situation crystallizing with uncomfortable clarity. Foreign military forces were establishing infrastructure in American waters while official channels struggled to understand the scope of the threat. The Deep Blue network had been designed for exactly this scenario, but using it effectively would require coordination that went beyond military operations into political and diplomatic realms. All stations, this is network actual. Maintain continuous surveillance of foreign assets, but do not engage without direct authorization. We've got a Pentagon assessment team incoming, and I need current threat status when they arrive. Over the next 6 hours, Jake prepared briefing materials that would introduce the American defense establishment to capabilities they'd never suspected existed. The Deep Blue network's operational history, technical specifications, and current intelligence painted a picture of threats and assets that would reshape national security planning. But it was the arrival of Admiral Martinez and her assessment team that truly drove home the magnitude of what Jake had inherited. The Admiral descended into Deep Blue Station with the controlled amazement of a professional seeing capabilities beyond her wildest projections. Her team included submarine warfare specialists, intelligence analysts, and technical experts who moved through the installation with the careful attention of people documenting history. Commander Sullivan, Admiral Martinez said as they toured the Phantom's control room, "This submarine represents technology that's decades ahead of our most advanced systems. How has this remained operational without any official budget or oversight?" Jake gestured toward the crew members who continued their duties with quiet professionalism. The network has been self-sustaining through carefully managed cover operations. Agricultural businesses, mining companies, freight operations, all legitimate enterprises that generated revenue while providing cover for military activities. Dr. Sarah Kim, a submarine warfare specialist, reviewed technical specifications with obvious astonishment. The magnetic propulsion system alone represents breakthroughs that our current research programs are trying to achieve. And these sonar arrays, They could track targets in acoustic conditions that would blind anything in the regular fleet. Admiral Martinez studied intelligence displays showing current foreign submarine positions. Commander, based on what you've shown us, these installations represent America's most advanced maritime defense capability. But they also represent the largest unauthorized military operation in American history. Jake understood the political implications she was raising. Admiral, the Deep Blue Network has operated under presidential authorization that was established during the Cuban Missile Crisis. That authorization was deliberately designed to survive changes of administration without requiring renewal. The CIA assessment team leader, who'd identified himself only as Agent Parker, reviewed operational logs with growing concern. The problem, Commander, is that authorization was based on Cold War threat assessments. Using these assets against current threats could trigger international incidents that the State Department isn't prepared to manage. Jake pulled up current intelligence showing foreign submarine positions and activities. Agent Parker, the threats we're facing now are exactly what Deep Blue was designed to address. Foreign military assets operating in American waters, gathering intelligence for operations that could compromise national security. Admiral Martinez spent several minutes reviewing the tactical situation, her expression growing increasingly grave. The coordination of these foreign operations suggests planning at the highest governmental levels. This isn't opportunistic intelligence. Gathering this is preparation for something major. That's our assessment, Admiral. And based on the escalation we've seen since yesterday's engagement, they're not going to be deterred by diplomatic protests. Dr. Kim looked up from her technical review. Admiral, these submarines could engage and defeat any foreign assets in American waters without leaving evidence that could be traced to official U.S. military operations. The deniability factor is absolute. Agent Parker immediately understood the implications, which means we could respond to threats that diplomacy can't address without triggering the kind of international incidents that could escalate to larger conflicts. Admiral Martinez nodded slowly, her strategic thinking clearly processing possibilities that went far beyond submarine warfare. Commander Sullivan, what's your assessment of current Deep Blue Network operational readiness? 6 operational stations with full crews and submarines, plus whatever assets we recover from Deep Blue 5. Each installation is capable of independent operations while maintaining network coordination. We can project force anywhere in the world while maintaining complete deniability. The briefing continued for another 4 hours, covering everything from technical capabilities to operational history to current threat assessments. By the time it concluded, Jake could see that Admiral Martinez and her team understood. They were dealing with military assets that could reshape American strategic options. Commander, Admiral Martinez said finally, I'm recommending to the Joint Chiefs that Deep Blue Network receive official recognition and integration with current defense planning. But that's going to take time, and based on your intelligence, we may not have time. Jake nodded, understanding the authorization he was about to receive. Admiral, what are my operational parameters until official integration is complete? You have full authority to defend American territorial waters from foreign military incursion, using whatever methods you deem appropriate, if you can stop these operations without triggering international incidents. You have my full support. Agent Parker added, Commander, we need to understand that what happens over the next few days could determine whether the Deep Blue Network becomes America's greatest strategic asset or its biggest political liability. Jake looked out at the USS Phantom, floating in her impossible harbor while her crew prepared for missions that would define the future of covert naval operations. Understood, sir. We'll protect American interests while maintaining deniability. It's what we were built for. But as Admiral Martinez and her team prepared to return to the surface, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that the next phase of operations would test the Deep Blue Network in ways its original designers had never imagined. His secure phone buzzed with an urgent message from Deep Blue 3. Multiple foreign submarines. Converging on installation approaches. Request immediate assistance from network assets. Jake realized that while he'd been briefing Pentagon officials on Deep Blue capabilities, the enemy had been positioning for coordinated strikes against the installations themselves. The real war was about to begin. The coordinated attack began at 0347 hours with simultaneous assaults on 3 Deep Blue installations. Jake watched in horror as tactical displays showed foreign submarines launching what appeared to be cyber warfare attacks against Deep Blue Stations 2, 4, and 6, using precisely targeted electromagnetic pulse weapons that suggested intimate knowledge of installation vulnerabilities. Network actual. This is Deep Blue 4. Commander Rodriguez's voice crackled through interference. We're under electronic attack. Primary systems down. Backup power only. Unknown contacts approaching installation perimeter. Similar reports flooded in from 2 other stations while Jake stood in the Phantom's control room, realizing that their engagement with the Chinese submarine had triggered exactly the response he'd feared. Instead of deterring foreign operations, it had accelerated them into open warfare against America's most classified assets. "Sir," Lieutenant Chen reported, "multiple contacts approaching our position. Count 6 submarines, various national signatures. Moving in coordinated attack formation." Jake felt the tactical situation crystallizing with terrifying clarity. Foreign intelligence services hadn't just discovered one Deep Blue installation, they'd mapped the entire network and were now attempting to neutralize America's most advanced maritime defense capability in a single coordinated strike. "General quarters," he ordered. "All hands to battle stations." "This is not a drill." Commander Torres moved to the weapons console with grim efficiency. "Sir, we're outnumbered 6-1, and they know our position. Recommend we go deep and attempt to break contact." Jake studied the tactical display, watching enemy submarines position themselves to cut off escape routes while maintaining attack formations that suggested professional military coordination. "Negative, Commander. If we run, they'll destroy the other installations while we're gone. We make our stand here." The USS Phantom prepared for combat with the silent intensity that defined submarine warfare, but Jake knew they were facing odds that no conventional submarine could survive. Their only advantage was technology that officially didn't exist, and weapon systems that could engage multiple targets without revealing their position. "Lieutenant Chen, can you identify specific submarine classes?" "Chinese Type 095s, Russian Akula class, and what appears to be a North Korean vessel of unknown configuration." "Sir, the coordination suggests this was planned at the highest levels of multiple governments." Jake opened the network command channel, connecting with all operational Deep Blue stations. "Network actual to all stations. We're under coordinated attack by foreign military assets. Shift to combat operations and engage all threats to installation security." The response was immediate but alarming. "Deep Blue 2, primary systems restored, but under continued electronic attack. We count 4 submarines approaching installation. Perimeter. Deep Blue 6, engaging 2 foreign submarines with experimental weapon systems. So far maintaining position but taking damage to secondary systems." Jake realized that the foreign attack had been timed to overwhelm Deep Blue defenses through simultaneous strikes that would prevent mutual support between installations. It was textbook military strategy applied to a target they should never have been able to identify. "Sir," the weapons officer reported, "enemy submarines are launching what appear to be reconnaissance drones. They're trying to map our defensive positions before closing to attack range." Jake made the decision that would define his command of the Deep Blue network. "Launch countermeasures." Deploy everything we have: EMP, torpedoes, acoustic jammers, and the experimental systems that aren't in any official inventory. We stop this attack here, or we lose the entire network. The USS Phantom unleashed weapon systems that represented 60 years of classified research and development. EMP torpedoes disabled enemy electronics, while acoustic warfare systems created false sonar signatures that confused targeting computers. Most devastating were the experimental weapons that attacked submarines through methods that conventional naval warfare had never anticipated. Direct hit on Chinese submarine, Chun reported. Electronics disabled, emergency surfacing, second target. Sir, the Russian submarine appears to be retreating at high speed. But even as the Phantom drove off, immediate threats, reports from other stations painted a disturbing picture of coordinated attacks that suggested foreign intelligence services had been planning this operation for months. Deep Blue 4 to network actual. Commander Rodriguez's voice carried obvious strain. We've repelled the immediate attack, but they deployed some kind of monitoring equipment before retreating. Sir, they've been mapping our installations for systematic attack. Jake felt cold certainty settling in his stomach. The foreign attack wasn't just an attempt to neutralize Deep Blue assets. It was intelligence gathering on a massive scale, designed to expose America's most classified military capabilities to international scrutiny. His secure phone rang with an encrypted call from Admiral Martinez. Commander Sullivan, we're detecting massive electronic warfare activity in your area. What's your status? Admiral, we're under coordinated attack by foreign submarine forces. 6 installations targeted simultaneously, suggesting they've mapped our entire network. We're holding positions but taking damage. The silence on the channel lasted nearly 30 seconds. Commander, are you telling me that foreign military forces are conducting open warfare against classified American installations? Yes, ma'am. Using weapons and tactics that suggest this operation was planned at the governmental level. They know exactly where we are and what they're attacking. Admiral Martinez's voice carried the weight of strategic implications that went far beyond submarine warfare. Commander, if foreign governments are conducting coordinated attacks on American military installations, we're looking at acts of war. But installations that officially don't exist can't be defended through diplomatic channels. Jake understood the impossible situation they faced. Admiral, recommend immediate escalation to National Security Council level. The Deep Blue network is under attack by coordinated foreign military action that could compromise our most advanced maritime defense capabilities. Understood, Commander. Maintain defensive positions and document everything. We may need to make some very difficult decisions about acknowledging assets that were never supposed to exist. The call ended, leaving Jake to coordinate defensive installations that were fighting for survival against enemies that had somehow penetrated 60 years of operational security. The tactical situation was evolving rapidly, with foreign submarines regrouping for what appeared to be a second wave of attacks. Sir, Torres reported, we're receiving distress signals from Deep Blue 5, the installation that went dark 2 weeks ago. It's back online, requesting immediate assistance. Jake felt pieces of a larger puzzle falling into place. Commander, what if Deep Blue 5 didn't go dark because of caretaker health issues? What if it was compromised? The implications were staggering. If foreign intelligence services had captured an intact Deep Blue installation, they would have access to all network communication protocols, operational procedures, and technical specifications. It would explain how they'd been able to coordinate simultaneous attacks on installations that were supposed to be completely secure. Network actual to all stations, Jake announced. Deep Blue 5 may be compromised. Assume all network communications have been monitored and shift to emergency protocols immediately. The response was immediate recognition of a catastrophic security breach. If Deep Blue 5 had been providing intelligence to foreign forces for 2 weeks, the entire network was compromised beyond any possibility of maintaining operational security. Jake's tactical training kicked in, analyzing options that ranged from bad to worse. They could continue fighting from compromised positions, retreat and abandon installations that represented billions in investment, or escalate to weapons systems that would definitely trigger international incidents. "Sir," Chun reported with obvious alarm, "sonar contact bearing 090. Single submarine, signature unknown, approaching at high speed. Sir ... It's massive, larger than anything in any Navy's inventory." Jake studied the sonar reading, seeing a contact that defied classification. The signature suggested a submarine nearly twice the size of the largest vessels in the Russian fleet, moving with acoustic characteristics that implied propulsion systems beyond current technology. Range and bearing? 12 nautical miles and closing. "Sir, based on its size and approach vector, this isn't part of the coordinated attack. This is something else entirely." Jake realized that the foreign attack on Deep Blue installations might have been designed to flush out defensive capabilities, revealing the network's existence to forces that represented an even greater threat than conventional military action. His secure communication system activated with a transmission on frequencies that shouldn't exist, using encryption protocols that predated Deep Blue Station by decades. "USS Phantom, this is Deep Blue 0. Prepare to receive an operational commander for emergency briefing. The network is more extensive than you realize, and the current attack is just the beginning." Jake stared at the message, understanding that his inheritance of the Deep Blue network had revealed only part of a military structure that extended far beyond anything Uncle Charlie had described. Deep Blue 0 was approaching with answers that would redefine everything he thought he understood about America's defensive capabilities. But first, he had to survive the next wave of attacks from foreign submarines that were positioning for what appeared to be an all-out assault on the most classified military installations in American history. The USS Phantom prepared for combat against odds that would test technology and crew training to their absolute limits. While Jake realized that commanding the Deep Blue network was only the beginning of responsibilities that reached into the deepest levels of American national security, the real war was about to reveal itself, and Jake wasn't sure the country was prepared for what they'd been hiding beneath the surface of domestic waters for over 60 years. His tactical displays showed enemy submarines closing from multiple vectors, while the mysterious Deep Blue 0 approached with answers that could change everything about the battle they were about to fight. Jake took a deep breath and prepared to discover just how deep America's military secrets actually went. Deep Blue 0 materialized from the depths like a leviathan from another age, a submarine so massive it dwarfed even the Phantom, moving with acoustic signatures that suggested technology decades beyond anything Jake had encountered. As it approached Deep Blue Station's underwater docking facility, Jake realized he was about to meet the true architects of America's shadow fleet. The submarine that docked alongside the Phantom bore no national markings or identification, but its hull design incorporated stealth technology that made contemporary submarines look primitive by comparison. When the airlock connected and the hatch opened, Jake found himself facing a woman in her 70s wearing a uniform that bore rank insignia he didn't recognize. "Lieutenant Commander Sullivan," she said with the authority of someone accustomed to commanding forces that officially didn't exist. "Admiral Catherine Ross, Deep Blue 0, I've been monitoring your situation, and we need to talk immediately. The attack on the network is just the opening move in something much larger." Jake followed Admiral Ross through corridors that seemed to extend far deeper into the earth than Deep Blue Station's impressive infrastructure. They emerged into a command center that made the Phantom's control room look modest banks of monitors displaying global intelligence feeds, communication systems connected to assets Jake couldn't identify, and tactical displays showing submarine positions across every ocean on Earth. "Admiral," Jake said, struggling to process the scope of what he was seeing, "I thought Deep Blue Station was the network's primary hub." Ross smiled grimly as she activated displays that revealed the true extent of America's hidden maritime capabilities. "Commander, what you inherited from Charlie was the operational level of the Deep Blue network. What you're seeing now is the strategic level assets that coordinate not just domestic defense, but global maritime operations that maintain American interests without official acknowledgement." The display showed submarine positions across the Pacific, Atlantic, Arctic, and even inland waterways that Jake hadn't known were accessible to submarine operations. Each contact pulsed with status indicators showing active missions, intelligence gathering, and defensive positioning that painted a picture of maritime dominance on a scale he'd never imagined. "How many installations are there?" Jake asked. 47. Underwater facilities across 6 continents, plus mobile command platforms that can establish temporary bases anywhere in the world. The 7 stations you know about are just a domestic component of a network that's been protecting American interests globally since the 1960s. Jake felt the weight of revelation settling over him like deep water pressure. "Admiral, if this network exists, why wasn't I briefed when I took command of domestic operations?" Ross studied displays showing the current tactical situation around all Deep Blue installations. Because domestic and international operations were deliberately compartmentalized, Charlie knew only what he needed to know to run the American facilities. You were supposed to inherit just enough to handle domestic threats, but the attack changed that. The attack revealed that foreign intelligence services have discovered far more about our capabilities than we realized. They're not just targeting the domestic network, Jake, they're preparing for coordinated strikes against our global assets. Admiral Ross activated a secure communication channel that connected them to submarine commanders operating from bases Jake hadn't known existed. The briefing that followed revealed a shadow war that had been escalating for months without any acknowledgement from official channels. "The Chinese aren't just operating in the Great Lakes," reported Commander Zhang from Deep Blue Pacific Alpha. "They've deployed permanent monitoring stations along our west coast approach routes and established what appears to be a submarine base in disputed waters near the Spratly Islands. Russian activity in the Arctic has increased by 400% over the past 6 months," added Commander Petrov from Deep Blue Arctic Station. "They're using nuclear icebreakers to establish submarine-accessible routes that bypass all existing treaty limitations." Jake realized he was receiving intelligence that revealed global submarine warfare on a scale that dwarfed anything discussed in official military briefings. "Admiral Ross, why haven't these activities been reported through regular intelligence channels?" "Because regular intelligence channels don't know these assets exist. The Deep Blue Network operates with complete separation from official military structure, REPORTIN, directly to a National Security Council subcommittee that has existed since the Kennedy administration." Ross pulled up classified documents that showed presidential authorization spanning 6 decades, each maintaining the network's operational independence while expanding its global reach. Every president since Kennedy has been briefed on Deep Blue capabilities and authorized continued operations, but always with the understanding that these assets provide options that diplomacy can't address. Jake studied the documents, understanding, for the first time, the true scope of his uncle's burden. Charlie wasn't just maintaining a submarine base, he was part of a global network that's been conducting covert operations for 60 years. Exactly. And now that network is under coordinated attack by foreign forces that have somehow penetrated operational security that was supposed to be absolute. The tactical displays suddenly flashed urgent warnings as Deep Blue installations around the world reported simultaneous attacks. Jake watched in horror as foreign submarines launched coordinated strikes against American assets on 6 continents, using precisely targeted weapons that suggested detailed intelligence about network vulnerabilities. "Admiral," he said, feeling the scope of catastrophe unfolding, "they're not just attacking the domestic installations. They're hitting everything." Ross nodded grimly. Someone provided them with complete network intelligence locations, capabilities, operational procedures, everything they need to neutralize America's most advanced maritime defense system in a single coordinated operation. Jake's mind raced through the implications. If foreign intelligence services could neutralize the Deep Blue network, they would eliminate America's ability to project covert maritime power while simultaneously exposing classified assets that could trigger massive political scandals. What are our options? Admiral Ross studied global tactical displays showing coordinated attacks succeeding against installations that had remained hidden for decades. "We can fight from compromised positions and likely lose most of our assets. We can surface and reveal the network's existence to seek official military support. Or we use the Omega Protocol. Weapon systems are so advanced that their deployment would demonstrate capabilities that could fundamentally alter global power balance." Jake felt cold certainty settling in his stomach. Omega Protocol weapons would definitely trigger international incidents. They would also stop these attacks and send a message that American waters, both official and classified, are defended by capabilities that foreign governments have never suspected. The secure communication system activated with an urgent transmission from Admiral Martinez at Norfolk. "Commander Sullivan, we're detecting massive electronic warfare activity around your position and similar signatures at locations across the globe. Are you under attack?" Jake looked at Admiral Ross, understanding that his next words would determine whether the Deep Blue network's existence remained classified or became the center of international crisis. Admiral Martinez were under coordinated attack by foreign military forces at multiple classified installations. Request immediate escalation to the National Security Council. The silence stretched for nearly a minute. "Commander, are you saying that foreign governments are conducting warfare against American military assets that the Joint Chiefs don't know exist?" Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Admiral Ross took the communication. "Admiral Martinez, this is Admiral Catherine Ross, Deep Blue 0. I'm transmitting authentication codes that will give you access to briefing materials that require immediate National Security Council review. We're facing coordinated attacks against maritime assets that represent America's most advanced defensive capabilities." Jake watched Admiral Martinez's face on the secure video feed as she accessed files that revealed the scope of Deep Blue operations. Her expression shifted from confusion to amazement to something approaching panic as the strategic implications became clear. "My God," she whispered, "these capabilities. The global reach, how has this remained classified?" "Through careful compartmentalization and presidential authorization that was designed to survive changes of administration," Admiral Ross replied. "But foreign intelligence services have somehow penetrated our operational security and are now attempting to neutralize the entire network." Admiral Martinez reviewed tactical data showing coordinated attacks across multiple time zones. "If we lose these assets, American maritime defense capability would be compromised in ways that could take decades to rebuild. And if we reveal their existence to defend them, we trigger political consequences that could destabilize international relations." Jake added. Admiral Ross pulled up displays showing Omega Protocol weapons systems technology so advanced it seemed to belong to science fiction rather than contemporary military hardware. "We have a third option. We use capabilities that foreign governments don't know exist to stop attacks against assets they shouldn't be able to target. Jake studied the weapon specifications, understanding that deploying such systems would demonstrate American technological superiority while maintaining deniability that could prevent diplomatic escalation. "Admiral Martinez," he said, "what's our authorization for using classified weapon systems to defend classified installations against foreign military attack?" The question hung in the air while Admiral Martinez consulted with personnel Jake couldn't see. When she returned, her expression carried the weight of strategic decisions that could reshape global power dynamics. "Commander Sullivan, you have full authorization to defend American assets using whatever methods are necessary to prevent foreign compromise of classified capabilities. But understand what happens in the next few hours could determine whether the Deep Blue network becomes America's greatest strategic advantage or triggers conflicts we're not prepared to manage." Jake looked at Admiral Ross, seeing decades of strategic planning condensed into the moment when theoretical capabilities would be tested against real-world threats. "Admiral, recommend immediate deployment of Omega Protocol systems against all foreign assets threatening network installations." Ross activated command systems that connected her to submarine commanders operating from bases around the world. "All Deep Blue stations, this is Zero Actual. Authorization Omega Protocol. Engage all hostile assets with experimental weapon systems. Demonstrate American technological superiority while maintaining operational deniability." The coordinated response began within minutes as the most advanced submarines ever built unleashed weapon systems that represented the cutting edge of classified research and development. Jake watched global tactical displays as foreign submarine attacks were systematically neutralized by American capabilities that officially didn't exist. But even as Deep Blue forces turned the tide of battle, Jake realized they were crossing a threshold that would fundamentally alter the balance of global maritime power. Foreign governments would demand explanations for the mysterious failure of their coordinated attacks, while American politicians would struggle to understand how their military possessed capabilities they'd never authorized. The Deep Blue networks. 60 years of secrecy were ending in a demonstration of technological superiority that would reshape international relations in ways none of them could predict. Jake prepared for the political storm that would follow, knowing that commanding America's Shadow Fleet had just become the most visible job in naval warfare. We're approaching the climactic moments of this epic tale. If you're enjoying this story, please like and subscribe for more adventures like this. Now, let's see how everything comes together. The aftermath of the Omega Protocol deployment rippled across global intelligence networks like shockwaves from underwater explosions. Within hours of the coordinated response, foreign submarine forces that had been attacking Deep Blue installations simply vanished, not destroyed, vanished, with their crews reporting total electronic failures and navigation systems refused to function until they retreated beyond specific geographic boundaries. Jake stood in Deep Blue Zero's command center, watching intelligence feeds as governments around the world struggled to explain the mysterious failure of military operations that were supposed to be secret. The Chinese reported technical difficulties with submarine exercises in international waters. The Russians blamed unprecedented magnetic anomalies for the early termination of Arctic operations. North Korean officials remained silent, but satellite imagery showed their submarine fleet returning to port with obvious systems damage. "Phase 1 is complete," Admiral Ross reported as she reviewed global status updates. "All foreign attacks on network installations have been neutralized without producing evidence that could be traced to American military action." Jake nodded, but his attention was focused on a different problem. "Admiral, what happens when foreign intelligence services start investigating why their most advanced military assets simultaneously failed during coordinated operations? They'll find magnetic anomalies, electronic interference, and equipment failures that suggest natural phenomena rather than enemy action. The Omega Protocol weapons were designed to defeat foreign assets while providing plausible explanations that don't point to American capabilities. But even as Admiral Ross spoke, Jake's secure communication system, activated with an encrypted call from Admiral Martinez that suggested the political complications were just beginning. "Commander Sullivan, I need an immediate report on the current situation. The President is asking questions about submarine activities that I can't answer using any official intelligence sources." Jake looked at Admiral Ross, understanding that they were about to brief the President of the United States on military capabilities that had operated without his knowledge for over 60 years. Admiral Martinez recommends an immediate secure conference with the President and National Security Council. They need to understand the scope of threats we've been facing and capabilities we've deployed in response. "Commander, are you prepared to brief the President on assets that officially don't exist?" "Admiral, we just used those assets to defend American territory from coordinated foreign military attack. It's time for official channels to understand what they've been authorized to use, but never told about." The secure conference that followed connected Jake and Admiral Ross with the President, Secretary of Defense, Director of CIA, and Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest levels of American national security leadership, discovering capabilities they'd inherited but never knew existed. President Williams opened the briefing with obvious concern. "I need to understand what happened in American waters yesterday. Our intelligence agencies are reporting mysterious failures of foreign submarine operations, while our own monitoring systems detected weapon signatures that don't match anything in our official inventory." Admiral Ross transmitted authentication codes that gave the President access to deep blue files dating back to the Kennedy administration. Jake watched the nation's highest officials review documents that revealed the true scope of American maritime capabilities. "My God," Secretary of Defense Harrison whispered as he studied technical specifications. "These submarines, these installations, how has this remained classified through 12 administrations?" "Through careful compartmentalization and presidential authorization that was designed to provide options that diplomacy couldn't address," Admiral Ross replied. "Every president has been briefed on deep blue capabilities and authorized continued operations, but always with the understanding that these assets operate with complete deniability." President Williams studied global tactical displays showing the current position of American submarines that weren't supposed to exist. "Admiral Ross, what's the current operational status of these assets?" 47 underwater installations, 12 operational submarine squadrons, and weapon systems that represent 20 years advancement over anything in the official fleet. All fully operational and ready to defend American interests anywhere in the world. CIA Director Foster leaned forward with obvious concern. "Mr. President, if foreign governments discover the existence of these capabilities, the diplomatic consequences could be enormous. We're talking about assets that violate numerous international treaties simply by existing." Jake felt the weight of political implications that went far beyond military operations. "Mr. President, with respect, those same foreign governments just conducted coordinated attacks on American territory using assets that also violate international treaties. The Deep Blue Network exists to respond to threats that official channels can't address." President Williams reviewed intelligence reports showing the scope of foreign submarine operations that had been detected and neutralized. "Commander Sullivan, in your assessment, what would have happened if we hadn't had these capabilities?" Jake studied the tactical data, his special operations training analyzing scenarios that chilled him to consider. "Mr. President, foreign forces would have established permanent submarine bases in American inland waters, monitoring systems along our most sensitive coastlines, and intelligence gathering capabilities that could compromise every aspect of our maritime defense." "They were positioning for invasion?" "No, sir. They were positioning for control. Submarine-based infrastructure that could monitor and potentially interdict American naval operations while maintaining complete deniability. It's asymmetric warfare, designed to neutralize our naval advantages without triggering open conflict. Secretary of Defense Harrison reviewed Deep Blue technical specifications with growing amazement. Mr. President, these capabilities represent technological superiority that could fundamentally alter global maritime balance. If we reveal their existence, every nation on Earth will demand explanations and access to technology that gives us an overwhelming advantage. And if we don't reveal them, CIA Director Foster added, we're operating the most extensive covert military network in history without proper oversight or accountability. Admiral Ross activated displays showing Deep Blue operations over the past 60 years, humanitarian missions disguised as private operations, intelligence gathering that prevented conflicts before they started, and defensive actions that protected American interests without triggering diplomatic incidents. Mr. President, she said, the Deep Blue network has been preventing exactly the kind of crisis we just resolved for 6 decades. Foreign governments conduct covert operations against American interests regularly, but they're deterred by mysterious failures and inexplicable setbacks that they can't trace to American action. President Williams was quiet for several minutes, reviewing the scope of capabilities and responsibilities that had been operating under presidential authorization he'd never been fully briefed on. Admiral Ross, what's your recommendation for moving forward? Continue operations as designed, Mr. President. Foreign governments will investigate yesterday's failures, but they'll find evidence of natural phenomena rather than enemy action. The Deep Blue network remains classified, continues protecting American interests, and provides you with options that no other nation possesses. Jake felt the weight of strategic implications that went beyond military operations into the fundamental nature of American power projection. Mr. President, there's another factor to consider. If foreign intelligence services were able to coordinate attacks on our most classified installations, they may have assets and capabilities we haven't detected. The President's expression sharpened with concern. Explain. The coordination of yesterday's attacks required intelligence that should have been impossible to obtain. Someone provided foreign forces with detailed information about installation locations, defensive capabilities, and operational procedures. That suggests either massive intelligence breach or ... or what, Commander? Jake exchanged glances with Admiral Ross, both understanding implications that reached into the darkest possibilities of intelligence warfare. Or someone with access to Deep Blue files has been providing intelligence to foreign governments. The silence in the secure conference stretched for nearly a minute as America's highest officials processed the possibility of treason at the deepest levels of classified operations. CIA. Director Martinez leaned forward with obvious alarm. Commander, are you suggesting that someone within the Deep Blue network has been compromised? I'm suggesting that coordinated attacks on installations that were supposed to be completely secret required inside information. We need to investigate how foreign forces obtained intelligence that allowed them to target our most classified assets. Admiral Ross activated security protocols that Jake had never seen before, displays showing personnel records and access logs for every person who had worked with Deep Blue operations over the past decade. Mr. President, we'll conduct a comprehensive security review, but the investigation itself could compromise operational security. President Williams made a decision that would reshape the Deep Blue network's relationship with official channels. Admiral Ross, you have full presidential authorization to investigate security breaches using whatever methods are necessary. Commander Sullivan, you'll coordinate with CIA and naval intelligence to identify how foreign forces obtained classified information. Mr. President, Jake said carefully, that investigation may require revealing Deep Blue capabilities to intelligence agencies that don't currently know they exist. Then we'll expand the circle of knowledge as necessary to protect these assets. The capabilities you've demonstrated are too valuable to lose to foreign intelligence operations. The secure conference ended with Jake understanding that his command of the Deep Blue network was evolving from covert operations to coordination with official intelligence agencies. The 60 years of absolute secrecy were ending, replaced by limited disclosure that would allow proper security investigations while maintaining operational effectiveness. Over the next 48 hours, Jake coordinated with CIA analysts and naval intelligence specialists to trace the source of the intelligence breach that had enabled foreign attacks on Deep Blue installations. What they discovered was worse than simple espionage. It was systematic compromise of American maritime security at levels that reached into the highest classifications. Commander, CIA analyst Dr. Rebecca Chun reported during a secure briefing at Deep Blue Station. We've identified the source of the intelligence leak. Deep Blue 5 wasn't captured by foreign forces. It was surrendered by its caretaker. Jake felt cold certainty settling in his stomach. Surrendered? Harold Winters, the installation's caretaker for 15 years, has been providing intelligence to Chinese operatives since 2019. Financial records show payments disguised as agricultural consulting fees, but the timing correlates exactly with increased foreign surveillance of Deep Blue assets. Admiral Ross reviewed the evidence with obvious anger. Winters had access to network communication protocols, installation locations, and operational procedures. Everything foreign forces needed to coordinate yesterday's attacks. Jake studied intelligence reports showing the scope of information that had been compromised. How much does he know about global Deep Blue operations? Everything about the domestic network, plus general intelligence about international assets. He's been providing foreign operatives with a complete picture of American covert maritime capabilities. The implications were staggering. If Harold Winters had been feeding intelligence to foreign governments for 4 years, every Deep Blue operation during that period had been compromised. Foreign forces hadn't just discovered American installations. They'd been monitoring American covert activities and developing countermeasures. Where is Winters now? Jake asked. Dr. Chun activated satellite imagery showing Deep Blue 5's location. In rural Texas, barricaded inside the installation with what appears to be foreign technical specialists. Our surveillance shows Chinese and Russian personnel working to extract intelligence from Deep Blue systems. Jake realized they were facing more than just intelligence breach. Foreign operatives were actively accessing America's most classified submarine technology while being protected by an installation designed to be impregnable from outside attack. Admiral Ross, what are our options for retaking Deep Blue 5? Military assault would definitely expose the installation's existence, but allowing foreign access to Deep Blue technology could compromise the entire network. Jake's secure phone activated with an urgent call from Admiral Martinez. Commander Sullivan, we're detecting unusual electronic signatures from the Texas location you've been investigating. Are you planning military operations? Admiral, we've identified the source of the intelligence breach. A compromised caretaker has been providing foreign operatives with access to classified submarine technology. We need to retake the installation before they can extract information that would compromise global operations. Admiral Martinez was quiet for several seconds. Commander, military action against an installation on American soil would require presidential authorization and probably FBI coordination. Admiral, foreign operatives are currently accessing submarine technology that's decades ahead of anything in the official fleet. If they extract technical specifications, they could neutralize American maritime advantages that have taken 60 years to develop. The complexity of the situation was becoming clear. Retaking Deep Blue 5 would require official military action that would expose the installation's existence, but allowing foreign access to the technology could compromise America's most advanced defense capabilities. Jake made the tactical decision that defined his command of the Deep Blue network. Admiral Ross, prepare Phantom for immediate deployment to Deep Blue 5. We're going to retake that installation using methods that maintain operational security. Jake, Admiral Ross said carefully, assault on a defended position by submarine. Crew isn't exactly standard tactics. Jake smiled grimly, his special operations training finally providing clear answers to an impossible situation. Admiral, before I inherited this command, I spent 20 years in special operations. Retaking compromised installations is exactly what SEALs are trained for. The plan that emerged over the next 6 hours combined Deep Blue technological advantages with special operations tactics that could neutralize foreign operatives while maintaining the secrecy that protected the entire network. The USS Phantom would approach Deep Blue 5 through underground waterways that foreign operatives didn't know existed, allowing Jake and a team of volunteers to assault the installation from directions that the defenders couldn't anticipate. But as Jake prepared for what could be the most critical mission of his career, he couldn't shake the feeling that retaking Deep Blue 5 was just the beginning of a larger confrontation with foreign intelligence services that had been planning this operation for years. The real test of the Deep Blue network's capabilities was about to begin, and Jake wasn't sure anyone was prepared for the consequences of success or failure. His secure communication system activated with a message from Harold Winters himself. Commander Sullivan, I know you're coming, but you don't understand what you're really protecting. The Deep Blue network isn't America's greatest secret, it's America's greatest mistake. And I'm going to make sure the world understands the truth. Jake stared at the message, realizing that his mission to retake Deep Blue 5 had just become something much more complex than a simple assault on a compromised installation. He was about to discover secrets about the Deep Blue network that even Admiral Ross hadn't shared with him. And those secrets could change everything about America's role in global maritime security. The USS Phantom prepared for departure while Jake wondered if he was about to save the Deep Blue network or learn why someone had been willing to betray it to foreign powers. That the approach to Deep Blue 5 through the underground Colorado River system revealed the true scope of American engineering ambition from the 1960s. Jake stood in the Phantom's control room, watching sonar displays that showed artificially deepened channels connecting inland waterways to installations that military planners had scattered across the American heartland. Approaching Deep Blue 5 perimeter, Lieutenant Chun reported. Multiple contacts inside the installation, count 12 personnel. Mixed signatures suggesting foreign technical specialists. Jake reviewed the assault plan one final time, coordinating with the team of volunteers who had stepped forward when he'd explained the mission's importance. Commander Torres, 3 submarine warfare specialists, and 2 Deep Blue security personnel who had cross-trained in ground combat. Not exactly a standard SEAL team, but professionals who understood the stakes. Remember, Jake told his team, as they prepared to enter the installation through underwater access points that the defenders didn't know existed, we need Harold Winters alive. Whatever he knows about Deep Blue operations, we need to understand why he betrayed assets he spent 15 years protecting. The assault began at 0200 hours with the silent efficiency that defined both submarine operations and special forces tactics. Jake led his team through maintenance tunnels that provided access to Deep Blue 5's lower levels, bypassing security systems that the foreign operatives had compromised. The installation's main level revealed the scope of intelligence breach that had enabled the coordinated attacks. Chinese and Russian technical specialists worked systematically through Deep Blue computer systems, downloading decades of operational data while Harold Winters provided access codes and explained American capabilities. Jake positioned his team for simultaneous assault on multiple positions, using communication discipline that prevented the defenders from coordinating response. The engagement was brief and decisive. Foreign operatives who were trained for intelligence gathering, not combat, against American personnel who understood both the terrain and the stakes. Within 12 minutes, Jake's team had secured the installation and captured all foreign personnel, though not before they'd transmitted significant intelligence about deep blue operations to handlers outside the facility. Harold Winters sat in the installation's briefing room with the defeated expression of someone who understood that his careful plans had ultimately failed. Jake studied the man who had betrayed America's most classified assets, trying to understand motivations that went beyond simple espionage. "Why?" Jake asked simply. Winters looked up with eyes that held conviction rather than guilt. "Because the Deep Blue Network represents everything wrong with American foreign policy. 60 years of covert operations, weapons systems that violate every international treaty, submarine bases that could trigger wars if other nations discovered them. So you decided to expose them?" "I decided to level the playing field. American maritime dominance has been maintained through assets that other nations don't know exist. That's not security, that's cheating." Jake felt anger building as he considered the consequences of Winters' betrayal. "Harold, foreign forces used the intelligence you provided to attack American installations. You nearly got American personnel killed. I gave them information they needed to understand the threats they were facing. The Chinese, Russians, and North Koreans weren't attacking American assets. They were defending themselves against capabilities they'd just discovered." The twisted logic was becoming clear. Winters hadn't seen himself as betraying American secrets. He'd convinced himself he was exposing American advantages that other nations deserved to know about. It was treason disguised as a moral principle. Admiral Ross entered the briefing room with intelligence reports that revealed the scope of damage Winters' betrayal had caused. "Jake, we've analyzed the data they transmitted. Foreign governments now have technical specifications for Deep Blue submarines, installation locations, and operational procedures that compromise 60 years of security." Jake felt the weight of strategic implications settling over him. "What's our assessment of network compromise?" "Complete exposure of domestic operations, partial compromise of international assets, and technical intelligence that could allow foreign forces to develop countermeasures against our most advanced systems." Winters actually smiled at the news. "Now you understand. The Deep Blue Network's advantages are ending. Other nations will develop similar capabilities, establish their own covert installations, and create the kind of maritime balance that should have existed all along." Jake stared at the man who had single-handedly compromised America's greatest strategic advantage. "Harold, you've potentially triggered an underwater arms race that could destabilize global maritime security for decades. I've ended American maritime hegemony based on assets that other nations never knew existed. That's not destabilization, that's justice." Admiral Ross activated secure communications with the President and National Security Council, briefing them on the intelligence breach and its implications for American security. The response was immediate authorization for damage control measures that would fundamentally alter the Deep Blue Network's operational status. "Mr. President," Admiral Ross reported, "we recommend immediate transition of Deep Blue assets to official Navy control, with appropriate congressional briefing and international disclosure of capabilities that foreign governments have already discovered." President Williams reviewed intelligence assessments showing foreign nations' likely responses to Deep Blue revelations. "Admiral, what are the diplomatic consequences of acknowledging assets that violate international treaties?" "Significant protests, demands for technology sharing, and probably new international agreements governing submarine operations in territorial waters. But the alternative is allowing foreign governments to reveal our capabilities through their Own intelligence releases. Jake understood the political calculation. Better to control disclosure of Deep Blue assets than to let foreign governments expose them as evidence of American treaty violations. The decision that emerged from emergency. National Security Council sessions would reshape American maritime strategy for the next generation. Deep Blue installations would be acknowledged as previously classified research facilities, with their submarines transferred to official Navy control under new operational protocols that provided international transparency while maintaining tactical effectiveness. But it was Harold Winter's final revelation that provided the most disturbing insight into the intelligence breach that had compromised 60 years of American maritime security. "You think I'm the only one," Winters said as Jake prepared to transfer him to federal custody. "But Deep Blue operations have created enemies inside the American government itself. People who believe that capabilities this extensive should never exist without proper oversight." Jake felt cold certainty settling in his stomach. "What are you saying?" "Check the Congressional Intelligence Committee hearings from 2018. Senator Patricia Morrison asked very specific questions about submarine operations that aren't supposed to exist. She's been investigating Deep Blue assets for 5 years. Admiral Ross pulled up classified transcripts that showed Senator Morrison had indeed been asking questions that suggested knowledge of Deep Blue operations. Her inquiries had been deflected through standard national security protocols, but the pattern suggested systematic investigation of assets she should never have suspected existed. "Admiral," Jake said quietly, "if members of Congress have been investigating Deep Blue operations, how many other people know about assets we thought were completely classified?" The question hung in the air as both officers realized that Harold Winter's betrayal might have exposed secrets that were already compromised at levels they'd never suspected. The Deep Blue network's 60 years of operational security had been eroding long before foreign governments launched coordinated attacks on American installations. Jake's secure phone activated with an encrypted call from Senator Morrison herself. "Commander Sullivan, I believe we need to discuss Deep Blue operations and their constitutional implications. I'll be arriving at your location within the hour." Jake looked at Admiral Ross, understanding that his command of the Deep Blue network was about to face scrutiny from legislators who had been conducting their own investigation of America's most classified military assets. The secrets that Uncle Charlie had burdened him with were about to become the center of congressional hearings that would reshape American national security policy for decades to come. But as Jake prepared to brief senators on capabilities that officially didn't exist, he couldn't shake the feeling that the real revelation was still ahead. The Deep Blue network had been operating in absolute secrecy for 60 years, but the forces that had created it might have built capabilities that even Admiral Ross didn't fully understand. The mystery of his inheritance was far from over. It was about to become the most public national security debate in American history. Jake stood on the deck of the USS Phantom as she surfaced in the Potomac River, her black hull gleaming in the morning sun as crowds gathered along the waterfront to witness the first public appearance of America's formerly secret submarine fleet. The congressional hearings had concluded, international treaties had been renegotiated, and the Deep Blue network had emerged from 60 years of secrecy to become the foundation of a new era in maritime security. Senator Morrison approached from the pier, wearing the satisfied expression of someone whose years of investigation had finally been vindicated. "Commander Sullivan, I have to admit, when I started looking into unexplained submarine activities, I never imagined discovering an entire parallel navy." Jake returned her greeting with the respect due to someone who had helped transform the Deep Blue network from rogue operation to official policy. "Senator, your oversight has made us better. Operating in secrecy made sense during the Cold War, but modern threats require transparency and accountability." The crowd gathered for the ceremony included foreign naval attaches, defense contractors, eager to study deep blue technology, and family members of personnel who had served in installations that officially hadn't existed until 6 months ago. Jake spotted Uncle Charlie's headstone in Arlington National Cemetery during his last visit, finally able to acknowledge the man's decades of service to assets that could now be properly honored. Admiral Martinez, now commanding the newly established Deep Blue Fleet, joined them on the pier. Jake, the integration has exceeded all expectations. Deep Blue submarines operating under official Navy command have already prevented 3 potential conflicts through presence operations that foreign governments can't ignore. Jake nodded, understanding how visibility had transformed the networks. Effectiveness. Instead of mysterious failures that foreign operations couldn't explain, American maritime power was now demonstrated through capabilities that commanded respect while maintaining the technological advantages that made Deep Blue assets nearly impossible to counter. "Any words from our international counterparts?" Jake asked. "The Chinese have established their own special maritime research facilities that look suspiciously like Deep Blue installations. The Russians are openly developing what they call inland submarine capabilities, and at least 6 other nations are requesting technology sharing agreements." Jake smiled at the irony. Harold Winters had been right about one thing: his betrayal had ended American maritime hegemony based on secret advantages. But instead of triggering the arms race he'd feared, it had led to international cooperation in submarine technology that was making all oceans safer. "Commander Sullivan," Senator Morrison said, "there's one more thing. The investigation into Deep Blue operations revealed something we weren't expecting." Jake felt a familiar alertness settling over him. "What kind of something?" "Your uncle's files included references to Deep Blue assets that we haven't been able to locate. Installations designated deep space that appear to have capabilities extending beyond maritime operations." Jake stared at the senator, understanding that his inheritance might include responsibilities that reached far beyond submarine bases hidden beneath American farmland. Deep space operations? References to atmospheric and orbital defensive assets with operational protocols that suggest your uncle was involved in programs that make the Deep Blue network look conventional. Admiral Martinez activated a tablet showing classified documents that Jake had never seen before. The references are fragmentary, but they suggest installations designed to defend American territory from threats originating above sea level. Jake studied the documents, seeing hints of capabilities that extended the Deep Blue concept into realms he'd never imagined. If Uncle Charlie had been maintaining not just submarine bases but space-based defensive assets, the scope of American classified military operations was even more extensive than the Deep Blue revelations had suggested. His secure phone activated. With an encrypted message from coordinates in Nevada. "Lieutenant Commander Sullivan, this is Deep Space Alpha. Your uncle said you'd eventually need to know about the installations that protect American territory from above. When you're ready for the next phase of your inheritance, we'll be waiting." Jake looked up from the message to find Senator Morrison and Admiral Martinez watching him with expressions that suggested they'd been expecting this revelation. "Senator," Jake said carefully, "how long have you known about deep space operations?" "Long enough to understand that the Deep Blue network was just the beginning of your uncle's legacy. The question is whether you're ready to inherit responsibilities that reach beyond Earth's oceans." Jake stared out at the Potomac River, where the USS Phantom floated as a symbol of American maritime power that had finally emerged from the shadows. 6 months ago, he'd been a Navy SEAL on leave, inheriting what he'd thought was a simple wheat farm. Now he commanded submarine assets that had reshaped international maritime policy and apparently had been selected for responsibilities that extended into space itself. "Admiral Martinez," he said finally, "what's the official Navy position on deep space assets?" "The same as our position on Deep Blue operations before 6 months ago. We'll investigate, evaluate, and integrate capabilities that serve American interests while maintaining appropriate oversight and accountability. Jake understood. His inheritance from Uncle Charlie was far from complete, and the secrets buried beneath American territory reached further than anyone had imagined. But this time, he wouldn't be facing those secrets alone. The lessons learned from bringing the Deep Blue Network into official channels would guide the integration of whatever capabilities Uncle Charlie had hidden among the stars. His secure communication system activated with a transmission from coordinates that placed the sender somewhere in orbit above North America. Deep Space Actual to Deep Blue Actual. Welcome to the next phase of American defensive operations. Your uncle always said you'd know what to do when the time came. Jake smiled, understanding that Uncle Charlie's final gift was the knowledge that America's defensive capabilities extended into realms that foreign governments had never suspected. The Deep Blue Network had been just the beginning of a legacy that reached from the ocean depths to the depths of space itself. But that, Jake realized, would be another story entirely. For now he was content to command submarines that protected American waters while maintaining the transparency that made such protection both effective and legitimate. The boy who had inherited a farm had become the man who commanded America's most advanced maritime fleet, and the mysteries Uncle Charlie had left behind continued to reveal secrets that would reshape national security for generations to come. USS Phantom's engines hummed to life as she prepared to return to depths that were no longer secret, carrying crews who could finally acknowledge their service to assets that had protected American interests for 60 years while preparing for threats that might emerge from directions they'd never anticipated. Jake took one last look at the crowd, gathered to witness American maritime power made visible, then descended into the submarine that had become both his command and his home in the depths below. The surface world had finally learned about the Deep Blue Network, but Uncle Charlie's legacy still held secrets that reached into realms where even submarines couldn't follow, and Jake was beginning to understand that his inheritance was far from complete. What an incredible journey we've shared together. If you enjoyed this epic story, please like, share, and subscribe for more amazing adventures. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next tale.